Today on Hampton Roads Business Weekly, getting over the fear of sales.
Plus, moving from the military into business and making money with mermaids. Hampton Roads Business Weekly starts right now. Hello and welcome to Hampton Roads Business Weekly, a look at the businesses and entrepreneurs making a difference in Hampton Roads. I'm Cheryl Tan.
And I'm Zach Miller. We start today talking about sales, specifically taking the dread out of sales calls.
Sales is tough, but not if you have Chad Stenzel helping you out. Chad is with the Sandler Training Group of Hampton Roads. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you, Zach. Pleasure to be here.
So people have this stigma that sales is something that they don't have to do, they don't want to do. You obviously are not only great at sales, but you teach people how to be better at sales. When someone comes up to you and says, you know, I got blinders on about sales, what do you say to them?
Sure. Well, you hit it on the head. Sales is a four-letter word, right, for a lot of people. So I actually wrote an article about that once, and this idea that people are so terrified to say that they're in sales, but the reality is, and I know you know this, I don't care who you are, you're in sales, right? It doesn't matter. At the very least, if you go and you punch a clock for someone every single day, you're selling yourself to keep that job, right?
Sure.
You had to sell yourself for that interview. So the first thing I think you have to do is sort of get rid of this notion that a certain job or a certain vocation is sales, because everybody is in some form of sales.
You said sales is a four-letter word, right? Is that the problem though? If we change the word from sales to like a conversion, like I'm converting this to there, so does that make it better?
Excellent point. So we work with a wide variety of clients, and sometimes I can't even talk about sales with my own clients, but I can talk about client development. I can talk about customer service. I can talk about influence. And guess what? I teach them the same thing that I teach my sales class, but when we tweak a few words, all of a sudden it gets a little bit more okay. So one of the things I always like to ask people, Zach, is where does this come from, this fear of the word sales? Where do you think?
The cold calls, maybe. I don't know. I don't know. That would be the first thing that I would say.
Sure. So
you spin this on me. You make this hard. I'm supposed to make this hard for you.
Right. So I used a Sandler technique called reversing where I just kind of threw it back to you to see if you would come up with something. So here's what I think. Some of it comes from negative experiences we've had. Sure. Have you had a bad experience ever with a salesperson?
Yeah, sure.
So we have those every once in a while.
Fear, maybe.
So there's some of that. I think Hollywood has a little bit to do with it. Have you ever seen a positive portrayal of somebody in business or sales in Hollywood?
I know Leonardo DiCaprio did pretty good with Wall Street.
Yeah, it was a good movie, right? Yeah. But not everybody wants to be thought of or seen that way.
Sure.
So I think that's part. And I think the final piece is sometimes it comes from tapes that play in our head from our childhood. Think about this. For instance, when you were a kid, did your parents ever say, Zach, you shouldn't talk to strangers?
Sure.
So what's the first thing we do when we bring somebody into a sales role?
Hey,
you need to go out and you talk to everybody, right? You need to go cold call, you need to pick up. And so we have this fear that says, I shouldn't be doing this. I don't want to do this. I think another one that comes into play is you tell people you shouldn't talk about money, right? So that becomes a hang up for some people, especially when it comes time to talk about budgets or contracts and proposals, because we have in our head, this is a little bit impolite, it's a little uncomfortable. So we have to realize where that comes from and then figure out how do we get past that.
Sure.
And I think one of the first things we have to do is we realize that no matter what type of business you own or you're in, nothing happens until somebody sells something. Fair?
Sure.
So realizing that, we have to realize that it doesn't matter if you're in marketing or if you're in technology or if you're in a blue collar job. Whatever it is in blue collar industry, whatever it is, you've got to sell something first. So once we sort of get past that hang up and realize that everybody revolves around sales, the other thing I think we need to do is we need to do a better job of creating a sales culture within our companies. Even the person who might be answering the phone, the person who may only talk to a handful of customers a year who happen to call in, wouldn't it be good if they had the same idea of how to deliver great customer service and sales as that person who's out there writing a $2 million quota? One of the things I always ask people is, do you believe in what you're doing? Right? Do you believe in that cause? Because if the answer is no to that, then I probably can't help you, and you may not be able to help them either. But if they believe in it, then say, okay, well, then we shouldn't feel bad about asking someone to be benefited by this service or this product, right? So we have to get them on the mindset that, look, if what I'm doing is for the good, there's nothing negative about selling this to someone. I'm doing it in exchange for something that's going to actually benefit them in the long run.
So find something that you love and realize that sales isn't a 4-letter word.
It's not. In fact, Zach, what I say is use disarming honesty. Be the opposite of every salesperson you've ever seen in
Sure.
a TV show. Be upfront and honest with people, and when you do that, it's amazing how quickly they turn around.
Love it. Chad Stenzel, thank you so much.
Thank you, Zach. Good to be here.
Growth, glitter, and mermaids. That's what we're talking about with Elaine Luria, the owner of Mermaid Factory in Norfolk and Virginia Beach. That's coming up next on HR Business Weekly. From the military to mermaids, we're talking about growing businesses with Elaine Luria, the owner of Mermaid Factory in Norfolk and Virginia Beach. Elaine, thank you so much for talking with us today.
Oh, thank you, Cheryl, for having me today.
I didn't realize this until today, but you actually grew Mermaid Factory to 2 locations as a side business because you had a previous career, a very successful one in the military. So thank you for your service. And you had a very busy and important full-time job while you were building this side business. So
Yes.
talk about how that happened and how that worked for you.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll get back to how we came up with the idea for the Mermaid Factory. Back in 2013, we were looking for a Norfolk mermaid. And we went to every gift shop in town, found all kinds of beautiful mermaid things, but nothing was the Norfolk mermaid. So my husband said, let's just buy a block of clay and make one. So we sat around our table, made replicas of the Norfolk mermaid. And once we came up with one that was a close proximity, he figured out how to mold it. So we molded it and then cast it and made 10 painted replicas. And within 10 days of buying this block of clay, we went and saw the city. Bob Batcher, the director of communications, and we said, what do we have to do to sell the Norfolk mermaid? And so we came up with a licensing agreement with the city. And then 10 weeks later, we opened the doors.
No way.
And the business really grew faster than we thought. From opening the store, we thought, well, this is our financial risk for a year. And we decided we could manage that risk for a year with the 1 employee plus myself working, Sundays and a few, odd evenings to cover the demand. Well, soon we required more employees than that and everything else. And we eventually covered our startup costs in 6 weeks.
In 6 weeks?
In 6 weeks.
Incredible. Did you do a lot of marketing? Or what kind of marketing did you do to get that?
I think our initial marketing was really word of mouth. And then I played around a lot with Facebook and figured out what worked for me as far as my social media marketing. I've seen a lot of businesses where the owner takes on the personality and they put a lot of their own personal touch about themselves in there. I really didn't take that tact. I really found that the most successful posts for me have one picture of one mermaid with no more than 1 line of text. And then I played around with ways to build likes, to boost posts. And some businesses might not know, but the Virginia Tourism Commission has a digital social media co-op program. So if you market and include Virginia as for lovers and are also featured on their websites, then you can actually receive a reimbursement back for a portion of your social media marketing. Also, because the beach location, I really like to catch the tourists. So this is our 4th location, our 4th summer in Norfolk and our 3rd summer at the oceanfront. I've really always tried to focus on the tourists because I think there's a lot of people that are in town for roughly a week, maybe less. To get in front of them, I've used a lot of the Visitor's Guide marketing that Vista Graphics does. So the Virginia Beach Visitor's Guide, and I found it really successful to use their coupon book.
What do you attribute to your success?
People love mermaids. No, I think that, we're selling a product, but we're also selling an experience. So people come in and, my favorite thing about the store is to walk in on, say, a Sunday afternoon, and you have mothers and daughters painting, you might have a Girl Scout troop, you might have a grandmother with her granddaughters visiting from out of town, but everybody's really absorbed in what they're doing. And it also gets people outside their comfort zone, because you have people come in, they're like, I can't do this, I've never painted in my life. I'm like, glitter can fix everything, So pick
and
some
hot glue.
Yes.
Glitter and hot glue.
Pick some colors you like and get started, and you'll find that you are going to be happy with your product at the end. And I think, almost everybody is satisfied by the time they've done the paint. Then if they're brave enough to try some glitter and some rhinestones and shells. I mean, you can make a mermaid look good, even if you've never painted before. So that's the most satisfying part of the business, is just seeing people enjoy themselves. And I worked really hard a couple years ago as far as getting some ABC laws changed. because prior to the change that went into effect 3 years ago, you couldn't serve wine in our business, or a business of the type, because we're not a restaurant. But there was a law passed that's called an art instruction studio license, so it allows us to give wine to the customers. And I think the last time I looked, there were like 35 businesses across the state that are using that type of license. So it's definitely been good, and in this sort of niche art studio type environment to have that.
Plus group parties.
Group parties, right? So if you're 21 and you come in and paint, you're gonna not only get your mermaid, as much glitter as you want, and 2 glasses of wine.
Elaine, thank you so much. And
Oh,
congratulations.
Thanks. Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
Appreciate it.
Welcome back to Hampton Roads Business Weekly. We're here with Michael Schwarting of Knockerball Hampton Roads and Regent alum. What's going on?
Not too much. Good to be back.
So you were also in the military. Thank you for your service in the Navy division of the Armed Services. Let's talk about military and business and kind of the family piece of it. Like, how do you understand that entrepreneurship is something that you want to do and get your family kind of included into the business world while still kind of being in the military?
For me, it's just something I gravitate towards. I'm always thinking about business. I'm always thinking of different business models. How do we help the community? How do we help people? How do we provide jobs? That kind of stuff. So in the military member today, if you look at what has gone down over the last 10 to 15 years, a lot of them have been under some of the harshest of pressures and stresses over time. And the reality is, internally, they've kind of become entrepreneurial, because even though we're the wealthiest country out there and the most well-equipped country out there, the individuals don't always have everything that they need, and what they have to do is they have to bridge that gap because they still have to have mission success. So they've become very entrepreneurial in nature. And I think a lot more military veterans today are thinking about the entrepreneurial sector and really just trying to figure out, hey, how do I enter it? Where's my natural place to operate within that sector?
And how do they figure that out? How do they know where to kind of jump in?
Well, today it's relatively easy to penetrate the Department of Defense sector. So if you've been a service member in any capacity and you've found a way to innovate to make something easier or more streamlined or more cost effective, today it's very easy to get your voice heard and have the potential of starting a business. But again,
so let's dive into that. So you say it's easy to dive in and start doing that. What does someone do? So they figured out how to innovate something and they raise their hand and call someone, or like, how do they actually get in and start selling that piece that they've innovated off of?
Well, more than anything, it's tapping into that sphere of influence. It's getting the information or the product, whatever it is that you have, in front of the right minds and the right decision makers.
So how does someone find out who those people are?
Right. Most military people know the system internally through requirements and the acquisition process, if you will. Everything is open source, so it's very easy to get online and research it, even if you have no experience in there. But there's an approval process. I'm not saying the full process is simplistic,
Sure.
but it's easy today because we're constantly innovating and adapting our military and our civilian markets.
Would you say that the military world is very playbook focused and very process focused?
Yes.
So kind of joining an affiliate or a franchise is something that might be appropriate for someone who's in the military. I know you've done that. Like, is that process something that you like live for and love, or like how do you take the kind of military piece and the franchise or affiliate side of it and start just adapting to that?
Well, I think there's for the entity who's wanting to be entrepreneurial, there's a couple different ways that you can approach that. You can approach the system like I did, where I wanted that playbook. I wanted to exit seamlessly. I wanted to be able to have enough income and enough potential success down the road without me having to really go through that tremendously intense startup phase where I have to think about everything to the nth degree.
Because ultimately, when you're buying into something like that, you're buying someone else's success and the playbook, which is basically saying, this is what you need to do, this is what you need to do. And with the military, that's kind of what they've been saying. And so I think you and I have talked many times about, franchising affiliates are kind of the future of the world because people want to jump on something that is basically already proven.
Sure.
And if you guys have been spending 10, 15, 20 years in service following a playbook, it makes a lot of sense to just kind of jump on board with something like that.
Absolutely.
What else could someone that was maybe transitioning or thinking about business look for in business?
I think if they look back over their career, their service, remember those things that were annoying or frustrating. Because the whole world is innovating right now. And this is not a topic just for the military. This is the whole world. People are constantly, the reason why we have these smartphones is because people got tired of the old version. And so if you're in that, and I think that's more the inventor type mindset, if you will, but I think today it's very prudent to just remember what is an annoyance or what was an annoyance in your career and figure out a way to make that go away, because that gives you unbelievable power in the marketplace.
Solving a problem.
Correct.
Awesome. Thank you, Michael.
You're welcome.
Coming up on HR Business Weekly, my conversation with Fadi DeVos, CEO, entrepreneur of not one, but 2 companies in Norfolk. That's coming up next. We are here today talking with Fadi DeVos, the co-owner of ABC Consulting and PowerCatch based in Norfolk. Fadi, thanks so much for talking with us today.
My pleasure.
When we talk with entrepreneurs, a lot of them have a lot of ideas, and they have, in some cases, a lot of businesses. And you have 2 in particular that
Yes.
we wanted to talk about today. Let's start with the first one, ABC Consulting. As you're a structural engineer, talk about how you decided to create your own company focusing on that.
I worked for another company for 25 years actually, and then at the end the owner decided to sell the company, so it was time for me to move on and take the dip, and that was quite a frightening day when you start a company from scratch.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
But you did. How did you start making money, getting clients on your
Yes.
own?
When I first started, I rented a small office from another friend of mine that had a big office. So you want to keep your, I guess, expenses down, and you want positive cash flow. So that's the key. If you can keep positive cash flow, you can make it. And in order to do that, you have to get clients and retain clients. And I learned a long time ago, I guess, from the get-go, that you really need to treat your client properly and try to help them as much as you can, and then the money will follow. It's not all about the money.
Seems simple. Sometimes it's a little hard to carry out, but it seems like a very simple concept.
Yes, and the 3 other advice that I have that I worship is you always return your phone calls as soon as you can. You try to help people as much as you can, regardless if they're on the clock or not, which I've had many phone calls where I help people engineering problems, basically talk them out of a job for me, but help them out, and then they refer me to someone else, and then next thing you know, it comes back twofold.
Mm-hmm. So you have
The third item.
Oh,
I'm
you
sorry,
remember that one.
the third item is keep it simple. Keep it simple. My website is ABC Norfolk. If you can't remember ABC or Norfolk, I really can't help you. My email is f@ABC Norfolk. You see these long emails, and people sometimes cannot even spell something, and it's tough.
So you keep it very, very simple.
Keep it simple.
I love your 3 steps to success.
Yeah.
So you have one business, successful, ABC Consulting, very simple.
Yes.
And then you decide a few years ago to start another one. How do you figure out, in the time that you have, you're raising a family and all the duties that you have, to pursue something else?
Well, in 2009, the construction business was slowing down a little bit after 2008. So I was looking around to do something, and a close friend of mine came to me and he said, you need to look at lights. When you're in business, it's not about working hard, it's about the margin.
I want to delve more into that. So
Yeah.
it's not about working harder, it's about the margin.
Exactly.
So you realized there was an opportunity in lights. So talk about more about that.
So when I first started, when I would say to clients LED, they would say, is that the heavy metal, LED? And I'm like, no, it's light emitting diode. Of course, fast forward to today, you go to Home Depot or Lowe's, and there's always LED bulbs, and all homeowners know about it. What they don't know also is that the LED bulbs do not generate much heat, so it's easier on your HVAC system. So the AC runs less. That saves money. And our kits, we designed a kit that is a retrofit kit that take any fluorescent fixture, and you can, in 10 minutes, with no experience, 15 minutes, you can retrofit it and convert it to an LED fixture.
How do you help somebody else figure out that opportunity for themselves? Because you can work all day long, all night, every single day, and not make a profit. But you found a way to do that.
That is correct. You don't. I guess we're not always the least expensive, but we provide. It's all about the quality of the experience with the client's experience. So if the client have a good experience, you respond quickly. You take care of the issues, regardless if it's something it's your fault or you're not your fault. The client will remember that, and he will come back. And it's all about relationships. Business is about relationships. So clients will pay more. They will pay more for the service and the quality. I mean, it's not always about the money.
Yeah, and you've learned that.
I've learned that a long time ago. And I don't want 1 million clients that makes $1 each. I would just want 5 clients that make $1 million each.
That sounds like something good to aspire to. Fadi DeVos, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And with that, we wrap up another edition of Hampton Roads Business Weekly.
Make sure you like us on Facebook and Twitter, and then head over to hrbusinessweekly.com to get more information and watch previous shows.
For Hampton Roads Business Weekly, I'm Zach Miller.
And I'm Cheryl Tan. We'll see you next week.
Hampton Roads Business Weekly, sponsored by Regent University and produced by 13 News Now.